About a century ago, it was common to claim that the earliest Christians borrowed the concept of resurrection from pagan myths and applied it to Jesus. But this has been almost universally rejected today by scholars, and for very good reasons. Number one, think of who the earliest Christians were. They were pious Jews who often debated over the minutiae of the Jewish law. They debated over matters such as whether Christians could eat meat that had been sacrificed to idols, whether Jewish Christians could eat in the same room as Gentile Christians, whether Jewish Christians needed to maintain the temple purification rites, whether Gentile male Christians needed to be circumcised. Now, when you're debating over minor matters of the Jewish law to this extent, do we really imagine that these same Jewish leaders would borrow wholesale from pagan myths to form the foundation of their own? It seems unreasonable. You can find parallel details in just about anything. Many of us are aware of a ship that just a little over 100 years ago was making its maiden voyage across the Atlantic on an April evening and hit an iceberg. It was considered unsinkable, but when it hit the iceberg, the unthinkable happened and the ship sank, and more of its half of its passengers died due to a lack of lifeboats. Now, the name of that boat, it began with a T. It was the Titan. It was the Titan. And this is found in a novel called Futility, The Wreck of the Titan. And it was written in 1898, 14 years prior to the sinking of the Titanic. Now, no one would go ahead and say that the Titanic didn't sink. No, we find parallel details in just about anything. And so even if there are some parallel details between Jesus' resurrection and heroes, pagan heroes, and in their myths who had come back to life, it doesn't mean that the resurrection never occurred. We should actually expect to find stories of people returning from the dead peppered throughout all of human history. You know, there's a deep longing in most people for romance. We just can't seem to get enough of it. And so there's a lot of fictitious movies and romance novels that come out that talk about romance and great stories. But this doesn't mean that romance is unattainable for most people. What it means is that there's a deep longing in the human heart for romance. In the same way, we can find stories of people returning from the dead, even recent ones like the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. We can find numerous stories peppered throughout all of human history of the dead returning to life and talking about it. And the reason being is because many times throughout human history, especially in antiquity and in some places of the world today, life can be quite brutal. We don't want to think that this life is all there is. And so we want to have a hope of an afterlife, well, when God will reward goodness and punish evil. And so we would expect stories like this. We would expect stories where we are going to survive our deaths and where we are going to see our loved ones again. So just because of that, we wouldn't discount a story that is well evidenced about Jesus' resurrection because there are fictitious stories of people coming back to life, any more than we would discount the possibility of experiencing romance based on romance novels.